Good evening, everyone. I apologize for being a little bit late. I'll call this city council meeting of January 9th to order. The first item on the agenda is an open forum. I would ask Heidi Smith to step up and sign in with her name and her address and let us know what she's thinking about.
Good evening. I'm Heidi Smith, and I'm concerned about the build.
Can you speak into the microphone, please? And
Andres
move the microphone
Home
up.
Build, 6525 Richfield Avenue, or 15th Avenue South in Richfield. I have some questions with regards to this build. I'd like the timeline of the build. I'd like street water and sewer closures. We received a card in the mail, basically letting us know that they're building. I'd like disruption dates, any disruptions that we're going to have in the neighborhood. So I'd like for the city to list that. The move-in date, the anticipated move-in date of the family. And actually, I'd like to know the unit size and purpose. Are these answers that can be given during today's meeting?
I don't think today what I would suggest is that you get with staff, and staff will be able to give you all the information that you're asking for. I don't think we really have time tonight to do it, but if you stop or if staff can give you contact information, you can contact staff directly, and then they can arrange to get all the answers for you.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, Mayor Elliott. If you just leave us your contact information, or we can provide you contact information with our housing specialists.
Okay.
They would be able to provide you all that
primarily
information.
what I'm concerned about is depreciating property values and running into issues with the contractor like we did with the foreclosure or the tear down. They left a gaping hole for more than a month in basically in the lot next to us. With absolutely no safety fence that I then had to escalate to the mayor at the time in order to get resolved, because basically after the month they went and hung property like caution tape around the hole, basically indicating that they were going to leave the hole there all winter. So if this is the same contractor, I'd like to know that, and basically for the city to know that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Could you please sign in with your name and address, please?
Yes,
Thank you. While she's signing in, we have a number of people that are requested to speak at the open forum in regards to Maury's proposal this evening. Maury's proposal is on the agenda, and normally we don't allow people to speak at open forum on something that's on the agenda. It's not a public hearing. I will ask for comments from the city council if you want to take comments in regards to something that's on the agenda. I have no objection to it, but I don't think it's my decision to make alone.
I certainly would.
I have no objection.
I'd support it.
Sure.
Okay, so what we're going to do then is we have a number of people that wanted to speak in that regards, and so I'll just call them out. And I would say there's two other people that wanted to speak on the open forum, Ward Emery and Ginny Moran, in regards to the variance request at 6400 Pillsbury. That's on the agenda. It's an open meeting, so you're going to be able to speak when we have the open meeting. So you're not going to come up for the open forum, but when this comes up on the agenda, you'll have an opportunity to speak. So Christine Malik. Ms. Malik, could you please sign in with your name and your address, please?
Hi, I am Christine Malik. I am the Richfield Public Schools School Board Chair, and I am here to talk a little bit about the Maury's automotive proposal. We have met with the leadership of Maury's, so Councilmember Gonzalez, Superintendent Unowski, some representatives from Maury's, and a representative from Richfield Bloomington Honda and the Richfield Chamber of Commerce met and discussed a joint venture between the school district and Maury's Automotive. And we are talking about, or we are working together to make plans to include developing an auto industry classroom to serve students of Richfield Public Schools and work together with Maury's to prepare students for their future. We've worked to create a long-term partnership to create great opportunities for our students. We're excited that they have committed significant finances and time to helping us develop a strong auto-based industry opportunity and increased educational pathways for our students. Obviously, Maury's would need to be a part of Richfield for this partnership to blossom, and that, along with the potential increased taxes that would come into the city, are two of the main reasons that that we support this partnership with Maury's Automotive. We've been very fortunate to have the taxpayers pass two referendums, major referendums, in November, and I think bringing Maury's would help to mitigate some of those costs to the Richfield community. And that would be like a significant boost to our property tax base. So these taxpayer savings, long-term community partnerships, and support are the reasons that we support the idea of Maury's joining our larger Richfield community. I also would like to really recognize the work that we've done with the city council and the city manager and the city staff to work together with our schools in our city to help build a partnership together and make opportunities like this possible. So I thank you all for listening, and
Thank you. Ann Schultz. I did forget to mention earlier, and this isn't directed specifically at you, but you have approximately 3 minutes to talk, okay?
I will only take 2 minutes and 58 seconds.
Don't be offended, please.
Thank you. Good evening, council members, mayor, and city staff. Thank you so much for agreeing to listen to some public comments tonight on the Maury's deal. It is very much appreciated. My name is Ann Schultz. I am the president of the Richfield Chamber of Commerce, and I am here tonight to represent the business community in Richfield. And part of my role in this community is to continue to develop business. And in doing that, I often refer to this quote that I want to read to you guys tonight, because it reminds me of how important it is for all of us to work together. So if you will indulge me for just a second here. It's a quote by a woman named Maura Gast, and she says, "If you build a place where people want to visit, you build a place where people want to live. If you build a place where people want to live, you build a place where people want to work. If you build a place where people want to work, you build a place where business needs to be. And if you build a place where business has to be, you'll build a place where people want to visit." And I think about this quote every day when I am representing business in the city, and I know that it is so important for the business community to work with the city community and the residents all in a whole to build the place that people want to live, work, and play together. So I am here tonight on behalf of the Richfield Chamber of Commerce and our extended business community to encourage you, the council, to vote in favor of the Maury's development. I feel that this will help us take one step towards investing in a future partnership between the Richfield community, the schools, and the city for the greater good of all of our residents. And thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Lissaragwe. And if I really butchered that, give me the correct pronunciation. All right.
I'm Aaron Lissaragi. I'm also with the Richfield Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a Richfield resident as well. I'm at 309 Apple Lane here in Richfield, and I am the board chair this year for the Richfield Chamber of Commerce. Here tonight, first of all, thank you, council members, for hearing these comments about the Maurice project. I'm just here for my emphatic support of this project. I'm very thrilled, both as a resident and with the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce here, about the opportunities that we have to create a culture that not only affects the business community, but really ties in with education, and is going to be a very neat vision here for the years to come in Richfield. So again, just here to support that. There are going to be many people that are much more eloquent about the benefits of this than myself, but thank you for your consideration in building this opportunity for Richfield.
Can you make sure you sign
Yes.
in, please? Daniel Leffler.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and staff. I thank you for your time. I'm Daniel Leffler. I live at 6839 Clinton Avenue, and I work at Maury's Invergrove Mazda. I'm here to speak in behalf of Maury's towards this new facility. I apologize. I've never done this before, so any
We
informalities
we
here.
don't bite, we don't fire back. So you're safe.
Thank you. Okay, we'll just get started. We've got some points. Maury's has been a local business. It's been around for over 40 years. It's going to provide upwards of 75 new jobs to the community with a solid living wage. Maury's will add up to and hopefully surpass $700,000 in taxes to the city of Richfield. They have a great track record with the community and law enforcement. We pride ourselves in our involvement with community and local businesses. We've offered multiple internships and partnerships with area schools, and the Buy Happy Giving always directs money back into the communities that we do business in. The building, the facility is beautiful. It really adds to the area. It provides a really nice gateway to the city. I myself moved to Richfield because of the things I've heard people say. I came and checked it out. I love the city. Beautiful. I'd love to see it grow in a really positive way. And I feel this would be a really good partnership for the city. Maury's really cares about people, the employees, myself, our customers, and the community. I've worked in upper management at AT&T, Cricket Wireless, and all the training was about how to sell, how to convince people to buy your product. My entire week at Maury's, all they talked about was how to treat customers correctly, how to really care about them. My personal managers have told me to go out of my way to, reach out to customers and really just make it a personal experience for them. Here I actually have copies of our core values that I personally, at my time here, I've seen that this really is the backbone of Maury's. If you would like a copy here, I've got them I can pass out to you guys. Our core values, heart, curiosity, grit, humility, and unbridled integrity, really just speaks for the way Maury's does business. And I am 100% behind Maury's now. I drink the Kool-Aid. I'm in. So thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Verboef.
Hello. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear me tonight. My name is Scott Verbout. I live at 6721 Linwood Boulevard. I've lived there for 20 years with my wife and 2 kids. Raised 2 kids. They're 17 and 20. Going to be moving out hopefully soon. And I'm here to speak about Maurice tonight. I guess the economic benefits are probably going to be, everyone's going to know about them. Everyone has talked about them, about the tax base, the jobs, the community involvement that Maurice has with their businesses. So that's probably not something that I can really expand upon. But the thing that I can expand upon is today I took a drive down 77th Street where the projected business will be. And it's a wonderful neighborhood. You start to see parks, you start to see very well-kept apartment buildings. You start to see some businesses. And then all of a sudden, boom, you see the Audi dealership, which you don't expect to see in Richfield. It's something that was an absolutely beautiful building, and it fit perfectly onto the space. And when I saw that, it was like, well, now it really it makes more sense that Maurice should be there as well. It's a building that's going to be a beautiful building. It's going to, I think, make that whole area come up and look better and feel better. I think it'll fit perfectly into that space. And I just think it just felt like the right thing at the right time. It felt like it was going to be something that once it's there, you're going to say, it's always been there. That's the feel that I've got. I've been a business owner for 20 years. I looked at that site as well, thinking, if Maurice doesn't go in there, who is going to go in there? I don't see that being if it were my place of business, I wouldn't make it in that location. It simply wouldn't work. If you look at it from the 77th Street side, you've got access and you've got community. You look at it from the 494 side, and you've got a business that probably no other business could make it there, more than any other type of business could make it there. It just, you see it from the highway and you say, oh, okay, that's a destination. It's not someplace where, oh, there's a coffee shop, I'm going to go off the highway and pull over and get there. And I just, as a small business, I don't see the demand to be able to make it in that location. So I think a business like Maurice is an absolute godsend for that location. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm 2 for 2 on pronouncing the hard names, so. Joseph Souza?
My name is Joseph Souza, and I'm not only a Richfield resident, but also a Maurice employee. I've been with Maurice for more than 6 years and have lived in Richfield for 5. A little about my career success story at Maurice. I started working for Maurice during a transitional period in my life. I needed a paycheck, and from a recommendation of a friend, I took a lot staff position cleaning and detailing cars for one of their dealership locations. Job by many standards is an entry-level position in automotive. What began as a temporary job while I looked for something better turned into something so much more. Through hard work, grit, and determination, I stand before you today as their corporate video manager for the entire automotive group. My team creates some of the best dealership content in the nation currently, and this is all because Maurice recognized not only who I was, but who I could be, and invested in me. Maurice gives every employee an opportunity to grow and become great. Maurice doesn't just offer a paycheck or cashier's jobs, but endless career opportunities for their employees, and I've seen that throughout my time there. Maurice's success is built on one simple principle: happiness matters. This is prominent in the way that we give back in the community. Being the video manager, I've also filmed countless moments of Maurice providing moments of happiness to our community and our neighbors. I've personally been a part of the Rinkrats program, which is a Herb Brooks program that deals with inner city kids. We give them rides to hockey after school. It's a really cool program for kids that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to participate in that. Our backpack roundup every year has provided families that are less fortunate with the ability to have brand new backpacks for their children backpacks kids can wear with pride their first day of school. Maury's even fills them with school supplies. One of our dealerships reaches out in the community by giving away 2 vehicles every holiday season to families in need. The 60 Days of Giving, in its 5th year, saw a mother and 4 children receive a car and a year's worth of gas just before the new year, actually, and I was there to shoot that video, which was really cool. I would like to see that kind of community involvement in Richfield, and Maury's will provide that opportunity with this dealership edition. In closing, if the city is waiting for the right opportunity to come along for the betterment of Richfield, I was also waiting for the right opportunity to come along when I cleaned my first car at Maury's. And I would ask that you give Maury's the opportunity to be a part of Richfield's growth and community, just as it was a part of mine. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Shannon Souza.
Good evening. I'm Shannon Souza, and I have been a proud Richfield resident for 35 years. I've seen much positive change in our city and community in my time and would like to see that continue. I'm here tonight to talk about the proposal of Maury's Automotive adding a location in Richfield. I believe Maury's would be an excellent neighbor in addition to our community. The benefit of the proposed location would be ideal, an opportunity to clean up that area by adding a new building with a low profile, much less than the new Richfield Bloomington Honda dealership, and not taking away any homes or business as Best Buy did years ago. Maury's is a smaller dealership with a huge emphasis on giving back to the community. I've witnessed countless charitable functions and donations throughout all of their stores, and I can tell you that Maury's is unlike any other dealership. In 35 years, I've seen very little from our other large businesses, with the only promise being help with taxes. I believe truly that if Richfield were to let Maury's into our community, we will benefit not only with taxes, jobs, and community involvement, but a business that we can be proud to support. I have worked with large companies like Lifetime Fitness, retail, etc., and Maury's is not a big box business. They are driven by truly making their customers happy, their employees happy, and giving back to the community 110%. Maury's not only donates to charities with cash contributions, but also their employees are actively involved in donating their time. Driving a van for Herb Brooks, Rink Rats, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Joshua's Camp, 60 Days of Giving, and filling backpacks locally for back to school, just to name a few. I've been a customer of Maury's and referred friends and family, all who have had great experiences. From my personal experience, Maury's is about heart, integrity, and community. Thank you guys for all you do for our city. Your work ethic and compassion for Richfield does not go unnoticed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. Once again, Mr. Emery and Ms. Moore, and your time will come also. At this time, though, the open forum is closed, and I'd ask you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, I would accept a motion for approval of the minutes of the special city council work session of December 2nd, or December 12th, 2017, regular city council meeting of December 12th, 2017, special joint city council and school board of education, ISD number 280, work session of December 18th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is hats off to Hometown Hits. I always call on Councilmember Garcia first unless she passes or defers and wants to get the kickoff in the second half, so.
Well, I'll go ahead and go first, because you never know, I may lose my voice. A few weeks ago, we lost Vern Ludinger. Vern Ludinger was a very prominent member of our Richfield community. He retired from the Navy after serving 20 years as lieutenant commander, and he was one of the Pearl Harbor survivors. When he settled in Richfield, he served in the Richfield City Council for 17 years. One of the things I want to say about Vern, whom I've got to know because I served on a number of commissions, is Vern was a Republican, but you would never know it, because I think when he listened to people, when he deliberated the issues, I think when he came across to do his business, he was just unique. He was just a very easy person to work with. He was very open, and he was really committed to serving Richfield, to the best of his ability. And he was one heck of a good guy. So we will miss him, and we offer our condolences to his family. And then second, I want to mention that the Public Works Department will be sponsoring a 77th Street underpass open house. That will be held on Thursday, January the 18th, and that will be from 4 to 6:30 p.m. at the Public Works Building, which is 1901 East 66th Street. So please make every effort to attend. We're talking about the Maury dealership. I think this is something that those of you that are very supportive or not supportive of the Maury dealership will find extremely valuable and interesting. So please place it on your calendar. And I've got another one, but I think I'll let somebody else do that.
Okay. I just want to make the comment that it's good that it's nonpartisan office up here, because you almost made Republicans sound like a dirty word.
I second that opinion.
Well, I didn't mean that. What I mean to say is, really sometimes we have that little partisan flavor that kind of creeps in. And having said that, I want to mention the fact that we all did get some greetings from the White House for seasonal greetings, and which I thought was really nice, and I think it's a nice keepsake. So I think the office is important, but I also think that what people bring, I think quite frankly people do bring biases, and that has no place in any elective office, and that's what I wanted to highlight.
Here, here. I agree. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple items. One, I wanted to just bring to the community's attention, those that haven't heard, we had 2 fires in a 24-hour period here in Richfield, and we have two families who are safe tonight because of the great work of our fire department. So hats off to our firefighters who, on the coldest night, one of the coldest nights of the year, were out there in sub below zero weather, and we have all our residents safe, even though there were some family pets that didn't make it. We're glad for them. Our hearts are with. I don't want to bring their names up to embarrass them, but our hearts are with these families in their loss. And I just want to give the community an opportunity, to the extent that you want to give back and want to participate and want to pull together. Lots of great things have been happening. I know the Fireside Foundry has a collection, and one generous resident is matching the first $1,000 of support that people give. So I just want to give people that opportunity to support our community and support our firefighters. Also, coming in the first week of February, and maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong, is it a Wednesday that we have the indoor farmers market? I thought I had this on the top of it. It's the first week of
It's February the 1st.
February the 1st, and so that's going to be at the Richfield Community Center on Nicollet Avenue and 68th. There's going to be live music. There's going to be an indoor farmers market. It's great for kids, great for the community. If you're getting the winter stir crazies, come out and have a great time.
And that's from 4 to 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez.
I also just wanted to say thank you to our firefighters in Richfield. So before those 2 fires, there was another fire on the east side in a family in Seasons Park, and a family lost their home. And in those 3 fires, it was just absolutely amazing to see how our firefighters, our police, our community members, our residents came together to provide support. Organizations like VEEP have been involved, the Red Cross have been involved, and the journey out of devastation like that is going to be a long one. And it's very clear that in our community, people are invested from all walks of life in supporting one another to make it through that. So I do want to just say thank you. And I was starting to write an email to our fire chief, and I just couldn't do it because I was like, how do you write an email and say, thank you, chief, for sacrificing your life, and thank you, staff and police officers. I've written emails to our police chief. Thank you for putting your life on the line every day for us. It just seemed really trivial for me to write an email. So I figured I would just take the time now today and say thank you to all of our servicemen and women here in Richfield who put their lives on the line every single day to make sure that folks in our community are safe. So. And the second piece I wanted to share was for those of you connected to community members who might need assistance in paying their rent, there is a program called Kids at Home, and the application is still open. You can go to our city website and find that information. But really what Kids at Home does, it's actually a program that folks from across not just Richfield, but from other communities come to Richfield asking about our Kids at Home program, where we provide wraparound support services and financial assistance to families to help them pay for their rent, but also make sure that they have what they need so that their kids that are in the Richfield School District can be successful. And that's a multiple year program. So it's not just a one-time type of donation. It's actually quite a bit of substantial support. And that program is open right now. So you can go to our city website and find out more information, and please share with folks or organizations that you know might be interested. And the application process actually opened yesterday and then closes on the 10th. So there's only a small window, but that's a great program I wanted to make sure folks knew about.
Oh, I don't remember.
Councilmember Howard.
When you go last, all these wonderful council members always take the good items.
For everything that's left, because I'm actually last.
All right. Well, I don't want to reiterate, but I also want to thank everyone involved with fighting those 2 fires in a 24-hour span. Unbelievable. And wanted to specifically just call out the community outreach. It was just amazing to see how many people stepped up immediately with trying to figure out what can be donated, clothing, food, starting a meal train. The outpouring of support was immediate and just so impressive. So thank you to all involved. And I was going to mention Kids at Home as well. It's so exciting that, I mean, one of the things that I was most excited that we as a council took action on last year was to increase resources for Kids at Home. And as I understand, that means about 7 more families will be able to be served by this nation-leading program. And so that's why I think the outreach, getting the word out about Kids at Home is more important this year than ever, because it's been so utilized in the past. There hasn't been this opening to serve more families. And so Councilmember Reagan-Gonzalez covered it well about how to take involved, how to get involved and to inquire about the program. And I want to make sure that we connect with our schools as well. I think hopefully our board chair is still here. Would love to figure out how to make sure we get information about Kids at Home out throughout the schools as well. I think that's a great point of information to get the word out. And then on a lighter note, I noticed on our city's Facebook in sort of the year in review, one of the things that we posted that our city staff and others helped 74 ducks apparently in 2017. Which I have several follow-up questions, but I don't know what these ducks are getting in so much trouble with. It seems like a reality TV show, but we'll save that for another day.
No.
Yeah.
Someone needs to define help for me.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, financial, supportive device. Okay, well, talk to me about that, okay? My item on Hats Off to Hometown Hits is somewhat, for lack of a better term, perverse. There was an email chain on the city Facebook page, which I'd never been on, but I was told when I became mayor that you had to be on that so you'd stay in touch with the community. I was also told by my wife never respond to anything. So I did once. 5 minutes later, I retired from active participation, and now I'm a voyeur like everybody else. But there was an article that came out in the Richfield Sun Current indicating that Richfield's levy was set at 6.11. And shortly after that, and I know before I'd ever read the article, there was a question raised as what was the city council talking about at an earlier council meeting when there was significant dialogue about buying down the levy from 6.3%, which was our preliminary setting, to 4.9, in recognition of the fact that we had some referendums coming up for the school, and we wanted to try to do what we could to make it a little bit easier for the homeowners to be able to handle the referendums in line with the levy we were going to impose, and that's the reason we brought it down. The questions raised was legitimate because it had been published that it was at 4.9 and the article came out at 6.11. And the questions were raised as, were we, misrepresenting it? Were we lying? What was the situation? I view that as a hometown hits because it was an attempt. Maybe the choice of words wasn't necessarily my favorite, but it was a question asked of us is, what were you telling us then and why is this what's happening now? And like I said, my wife told me never to respond, and on top of that, if you are, have a 30-second pause because you often respond when you're angry and it doesn't come out the way you want it to. So I didn't respond. One of the council members did and posed a question for city manager indicating, this is my understanding of what happened, am I correct? City manager emailed him back yes and said, we're going to publish an outline of what actually happened and how it got to that. The problem was it came from a financial expert, not an English expert, and so it got a little convoluted as explanations of economic theories will. The simple fact of the matter is it wasn't an error on our part. We did set it at 4.9. The ultimate levy came in at 6.11 because we didn't realize that the EPA, which we had just chartered last year, also had a levy that was tacked onto that brought the levy up. So the levy that we set for the city was 4.9. The levy, when it was added in by Hennepin County, not by us, bumped it up to 6.11. So our representations on buying it down to try to alleviate some of the financial woes that may arise out of the referendum if they passed was entirely correct. What we didn't represent and what we should have once we became aware of it because our financial manager came and told us that the county had rolled that in. It called for transparency and a number of people referenced that, and you're entirely correct. So I guess what I'm lauding in this little soliloquy is the fact that people are paying attention to what we're doing, and if they don't understand it or they feel we have misrepresented it, we get called on it. And that's what it's all about. That's what government's all about. That's what we're all about, and we want to get called. Next time, if you're going to call someone a liar, make it Mike, okay? And then everything will be just fine. So with that, thank you all. Next item on the agenda is the consent the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Agenda is approved. Next item is the consent calendar. City manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. For those here in attendance, and those at home, the consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the City Council in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, all the individual items and the recommended actions is also approved, and no further council action on those items is necessary. Tonight we have a lengthy consent calendar starting off with item A. Consideration of the approval of resolutions designating the official depositories for the City of Richfield for 2018 and including the approval of collateral. Item B is consideration of the approval of a resolution authorizing the use of credit cards by city employees otherwise authorized to make purchases on behalf of the city. Item C is consideration of the approval of a resolution designating an official newspaper for 2018. Item D, consideration of the approval of a designation of an acting city manager for 2018. Item E is consideration of the approval of a resolution approving the public purpose expenditure policy for fiscal year 2018. Item F is consideration of the approval of a resolution approving the contract with the International Association of Firefighters Local 1215 for the contract period January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2019, and to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Item G is consideration of the approval for a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for the Blessed Trinity Catholic School, which is located at the Church of St. Richard, 7540 Penn Avenue South, for their 2018 Snowball Dance, which is going to take place on February 3rd, 2018. Item H is consideration of the approval of an intergovernmental cooperative agreement regarding public safety in Bloomington, Minnesota, related to the 2018 National Football League Super Bowl. Item I, consideration of the approval of a joint powers agreement with the I-494 Corridor Commission for the purpose of the participating municipalities to work cooperatively to improve transportation along and around the I-494 corridor. Item J is consideration of an agreement and resolution authorizing the Minnesota Department of Transportation to act as the city's agent in accepting federal aid in connection with transportation projects. And finally, item K has been removed from the agenda. Or should be removed. This is no longer needed at this point in time.
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar is passed. Item 5 has been assigned to Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez.
The next item is a public hearing and consideration for the approval of a new on-sale wine and 3.2% malt liquor license outside services to LRFC LLC, doing business as Local Roots Food and Coffee, located at 817 66th Street. On September 26, 2017, the city received the application materials for a new on-sale wine and 3.2% malt liquor licenses with outside service to LRFC LLC, doing business as Local Roots Food and Coffee, located at 817 66th Street East. Local Roots Food and Coffee is a new addition to the city of Richfield that will be occupying the space previously held by Richfield Floral. All required information and documents have been received. All licensing fees have been paid. The public safety background investigation has been completed. The results of the investigation are summarized in the attachment to this report. The public safety director has reviewed the background investigation report. There is nothing in the report that would cause the public safety director to recommend denial of the requested licenses. So this is a public hearing. Is anybody here to speak on the public hearing? Is anybody here to speak for this public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I would like to make a motion to approve the issuance of a new on-sale wine and 3.2% malt liquor licenses with outside services for LRFC LLC, doing business as Local Roots Food and Coffee, located at 817 66th Street East.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
This is just another indication, along with the work session we had in regards to the proposal for the champion therapy over on site. The east side is growing exponentially. It's really fun to see. So that's great. Item number 6, assigned to Councilmember Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. This is a public hearing and consideration of an appeal to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, which we are, regarding the Planning Commission's denial of a variance to reduce setback requirements for a garage at 6400 Pillsbury Avenue. In the summer, and notice the dates that I'm going to be talking about. In the summer of 2017, the city staff became aware of a newly built garage at 6400 Pillsbury Avenue, a single-family residential property on a corner lot. Despite several conversations and site visits with city staff prior to construction, the property owner, Mr. Emery, built the garage without acquiring the necessary building permits from the inspections division. Planning staff first discussed the garage driveway regulations with Mr. Emery in April of 2015. Planning staff again discussed regulations with Mr. Emery on January 2016 and informed him that a 3-foot setback was not allowed without a variance. The building official met with Mr. Emery in March of 2016 to discuss building code and zoning code requirements, including setbacks. A demolition permit was issued on May 6, 2016 to remove the old garage. However, Mr. Emery never applied for a building permit for construction of a new garage. However, upon discovery of the new garage in the summer of 2017, the inspections division issued a violation notice to Mr. Emery on August 31st, 2017. After receiving the notice, Mr. Emery submitted a variance application on October 6, 2017. The violation notice and variance application are included as attachments to this report. The garage does not meet the setback requirements specified in the zoning code. On corner lots, the side setback requirement for detached garage is 12 feet. The intent of the street side setback requirements is to maintain a consistent aesthetic throughout the community. Street side setbacks are larger than the interior side setbacks because this side of the property faces the public street and functions more like a secondary front yard. The previous garage on the property was set back just 6 feet from the lot line. There is a provision in the zoning code that allows the expansion of existing structures with non-conforming setbacks. Under this provision, Mr. Emery could have built a new, larger garage of this size as long as the existing 6-foot setback was maintained. In meeting with city staff, Mr. Emery was made aware of this allowance. There is no provision in the zoning code that would allow a reduction of the setback to 3 feet, aside from requesting a variance. There are 6 criteria that must be met in order to grant a variance. Staff has recommended denial of the variance based on a failure to meet all of the requirements. Specifically, strict enforcement of the setback requirement would not cause a practical difficulty that would prevent the property owner from using the property in a reasonable manner. A generous 2-car garage is 28 foot wide, 24 foot deep. Mr. Emery has constructed a 36-foot wide garage without permits and in the setback when he could have legally built a 33-foot wide garage or removed a tree from the property to allow the garage to meet setback requirements. Further, there are no unique circumstances that apply to the property that do not apply generally to other corner properties in the single-family residential district or in the vicinity. And finally, the circumstances that created the necessity for a variance cannot have been created by the property owner. Mr. Emery constructed the garage in the current location despite having known that it was not permitted. On September the 27th, 2017, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and voted 4-2 to deny the variance, finding that the request does not meet the necessary requirements. The City Council, serving as a Board of Adjustments and Appeals, is now hearing this appeal. If this variance were to be denied, as recommended by staff, then the property owner would need to modify the structure in a manner that complies with the zoning ordinance. And this is a public hearing, and I believe there are 2 people that want to speak.
Yeah, Mr. Emery? You were in the open forum. Did you want to come up and speak at all? All right. Ginny Moran?
Hi, I'm Ginny Moran.
Can I ask you to sign in
Oh,
with your name and
sure.
address when you get a second, please? Thank you.
Do you just want me to just fill it out on the back part since this is all
Oh,
full?
it got filled up. Could you, on the back or underneath, whatever
Okay.
works for you.
Okay. And the pen's there. I'm Ginny Moran, and I live at 6415 Pillsbury Avenue South. And I am requesting on behalf of Ward, I guess I'll say that I ask that the council overturns, or whatever the technical term is for it, the planning commission's denial of the variance. Really, it comes down to, for me, I mean, I live kind of across the street, well, across the street in Kitty Corner. I've watched for 3-4 years as no matter what this man has done to improve his property, which has gotten that whole neighborhood energized to improve their property, increase property values, which gives you all the right to tax us more on our property taxes. I mean, it's done nothing. He's done nothing but really helped the neighborhood kind of take a little pride and spruce stuff up. Yet at every turn, it seemed like every time I came home from work, or every time I looked out my front window, there was the city planner complaining about, we don't like how your flower gardens are, we don't like how you built your sidewalk, we don't like the garage. I mean, one thing after another, just, this man has been constantly, I hesitate to say harassed by the building, or I don't even know what, the inspectors at every turn. And, you know, and I hear that you're saying that some stuff isn't done right, but the fact is we're not here on what wasn't done right, we're here on a variance. So all of that other history, from what I can tell, doesn't matter. All I know is when I look out my out my window, all of the garages that are attached to houses meet the side setback variances. Every garage on our street that is unattached and setback sits on a property line. If you want consistency and uniformity, you almost have to grant the variance. It does create a practical thing. Yeah, he could have taken down a tree. It's a 100-year-old silver maple. It is a beautiful shade tree, one of the 3 prettiest trees in that whole neighborhood that add this beautiful character. Unfortunately, Ward got 2 of the 3 in his yard. One is on the side and one is in the back. To take down a tree like that is not a reasonable expectation. It's not a reasonable, that provides shade not only for his property, but for the apartments behind it. I just feel like it really felt like at the Planning Commission meeting that this was, the decision was made based not on, is this the right thing to do? Should this variance be allowed? Do we have somebody tear down a perfectly fine-looking garage that enhances the neighborhood and disenfranchise an entire neighborhood of people? Or are we just mad because we don't like the interactions that we've had with the neighborhood? We carry a slogan of an urban hometown. I'll tell you what, this decision is all urban and no hometown. We grant variances for businesses all the time. The Planning Commission admitted that. They said, we just hand those out like nothing. Why would we not grant a variance to a resident that is doing nothing but trying to make their property look good, make it usable? He has been an invaluable resource to every single neighbor, and I see a lot of my neighbors here. I want him to have that nice big garage, because that nice big garage houses, I shouldn't even say, some, you know, nice tools that he comes over and helps me do projects with that I need. He lends his know-how. I respectfully request that you all overturn the Planning Commission's decision to deny this variance. I request that you look beyond what some of the hurt feelings that have factored into maybe this decision and really look at, are we a hometown or are we just urban? Do we want to disenfranchise a neighborhood? Or do we want to help a resident really help the whole neighborhood revitalize their property? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there anyone else want to speak? Please come up, sign in.
Hi, I am Javier Ayala. I am Mr. Ambry's neighbor, and I really believe that Mr. Ambry is a very great asset for the whole neighborhood. He really takes care of his property, and I really believe that he never had a bad intention by not following the specific rules about building his garage. So actually, I would like to have that kind of garage he has, because it's in such a good shape and he really knows about construction, and I think his whole house is beautiful, and he takes care of the garage and the landscaping and all the things that you need to do to make your house look very, very sharp. He does it all the time. So we are humans, we make mistakes, and I don't think he should be punished that way from the city of Richfield or whoever is decided not to work with him. So I will appreciate that you that have the power to make decisions will work with him in the sense that can enjoy his garage, and pretty much is all what I can say about it. And thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to this issue? Please come up and sign in.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Wilson. Quite honest, I'm nervous to put my address on here because I saw the last meeting, how the meeting went and how they treated my neighbor, and I'm honestly afraid for retaliation, if I can be completely honest. So I'm just here to, in addition to what my neighbors have said about Ward and his property, I'm just here to ask you guys to please consider our voices, to listen to us. We are the ones that are living there in the streets. You know, I live on Pillsbury as well with my family. We all have kids around the same age. Ward has been nothing but helpful. He has, like Jenny said, revitalized the whole neighborhood. When we have our open streets party, we have not only our street, but 2 streets down. Everybody comes up to meet with us and to chat and get to know each other. I just urge you to please listen to our voices, unlike the last meeting when the council just practically shut everybody down and they had already their mind made up. They didn't want to hear anybody or, you know, listen to what anybody had to say. And it honestly, truly felt like they were just acting on, you know, past interactions that they had had with this homeowner, not necessarily on what was right for the neighborhood, for what was right for the property. They weren't listening to anybody. So I urge you to please not act the same way and listen to us. We are the residents that live there. Really, there is nothing wrong with the way he built his garage, and I just ask you to please consider overturning the decision that the past council members had made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to this?
My name's Anthony Schwendeman. I do live at 6400 Pillsbury Avenue South. I understand the proper procedures necessarily weren't taken on building the garage. Coming from a 10-year contractor, working alongside this guy here, if the things were set in stone on how to build the garage, they were well above and beyond that, and we can prove that through many pictures. My point here today is we have 4 points of our lot, correct? Correct. You're asking us to build 12 feet in from the property line, which you already have 15 feet from the curb, 13 feet from the curb. So in addition to the side of the garage, we're 17 feet from the street. How much more footage from the street do you need, and for what reasons? Second question is, we pay taxes on every bit of property inside that 4 points that we consider our property. But we're only allowed to build on 6/8 of that being a corner lot. I mean, we're talking about paying taxes on a property that we can only build in the center of the property. It wasn't suitable to build the garage 12 feet further in on the property. One, we would have taken down the silver maple that Jenny had spoken of. Two, we were doing it more of privacy for the apartment buildings, not only for their privacy, but for our own. When we walk out our back door, we see nothing but a commercial property. We have neighbors' garages that are built, like Jenny said, right on the property lines. We had surveyors come out, professional surveyors of our own, that you guys hired us to have survey the property, finding out that our garage is more on our property than the neighbor's garage is. Again, those are just some questions that I'd like to have answers for. And as Jenny and my other neighbor said earlier, we were bombarded the last time we walked in here. When we walked in here, we could tell on their faces that their answer was no. There was no fight. They didn't even want to let us talk, let alone voice our opinions on this garage. So maybe this is our last chance to voice those. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak? Please sign in.
So I came today to advocate for Ward's Garage myself. I live 2 doors down on the next block up north, and I can see his maple tree from my side door, and I've witnessed several raptors in that tree. With nests like several times over the last 10 years. And so I know that it is an important tree to keep. And it provides a screen for all the residents along Pillsbury to provide like a screen against all the apartments that are along the railroad tracks. And as far as unique circumstances go, I think that's one of those things that kind of debunks the idea that there is no unique circumstance. There's also a couple of communications boxes between the road and the garage that kind of take up space in that side yard as well. So if we're going to worry about whether something is sightly or not, maybe we should think about these communications boxes as well. I guess that's all I have.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak? Okay.
Hi, my name is Wilson Ortiz, 6414 Pillsbury, just one house over from Ward's house. I just want to say that I lived there. I lived in my house for over 8 years now. Ever since Ward bought the house and started doing all his projects, I noticed that the whole neighborhood kind of lift up the spirits about remodeling and doing trying to make the block better and look nicer. I watch Ward basically every single day, put a lot of work on his house and his garage. I know he's a very experienced guy doing construction, and he puts a lot of he puts a lot of attention to detail in everything he does. If he does something wrong, he will basically rip everything apart and start over. So I know everything that he does basically is to the best of his knowledge and to meet the city codes. For me, basically Ward is kind of like an inspiration for me to try to make my house looks better and to make the whole neighborhood basically trying to improve. So I'm just here to support Ward and everything he's done so far. I know the garage looks amazing. It's like the best garage that you'll see in the whole neighborhood, and I'm just here to support him. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak on this issue? Does anyone else want to speak on this issue?
Move to close the public hearing.
I have a question. Before we close, and this is a question for council. Are the only two alternatives destruction of the garage and or letting it stand? Is there any fine? Is there any third way that doesn't involve total destruction? Because on the one hand, I appreciate anybody that can get a dozen other neighbors out on a night like this. It speaks to his character and his connection to the community. On the other hand, when you are an inspiration for the community, and it appears from the record that he knew that this was in violation and he did it anyways, you should not feel the consequence, because we don't want to inspire people to build homes in their front yard or anywhere. You can't build anywhere, but it seems like the punishment should maybe fit the crime if there is any way to not destroy the entire all the good work there.
Just second before, just procedurally, can we just go ahead and close the public hearing as long as we're engaged in discussion now?
Yes.
So
Move
it's
to
been
close.
moved and
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Forgive me, Mayor, for speaking out of order.
No, it's not out of order. You're never out of order, but we just wanted to close the hearing first, so.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Mayor and council members, the answer is we don't know. As the staff report mentioned, Mr. Emery did not pull building permits to do this work, so we don't know what the engineering looks like. It might be possible for him to lop 3 feet off of the end and reconstruct the end. We just don't know what the engineering looks like, what the trusses look like, what the bearing walls look like, and so we would need to understand those things better. And ultimately, I think it'd be incumbent upon Mr. Emery to come back and show us how he could come into conformance with the required setbacks.
With that being said, and procedurally, I just would like to know, so we know what our options are. Can we adjourn or I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak because I have followed this from the beginning.
Okay.
Okay, the folks, the neighbors from that area called me because I represent that specific area. So what I did is I looked at all of the documents, and I talked to city staff. I also watched the planning commission meeting. I think the planning commission, this has never come before the city council. It goes to the planning commission. They are appealing the decision made by the planning commission. So I have done my due diligence in terms of looking at this, researching it, visiting the site, and quite frankly, you know, the applicant never contacted me. Neighbors did. One of the testifiers mentioned that the history, you know, well, that's history. Well, the history is relevant because the history shows a complete disregard of the process, a disregard of the ordinance and the purpose of the ordinance, disregard of the fact that staff was essentially trying to help the applicant work this out. You know, the fact that our city inspectors would harass an applicant is, I cannot, you know, city inspectors have a job to do, and they do it, and I think they do it quite well. They have rules to follow. They have an ordinance to follow. And quite frankly, you know, that's their job. If they didn't do their job, can you just imagine that everybody could go ahead and build willy-nilly and just to, you know, maybe have the neighbors come over and they'd, oh yeah, that would look good or whatever. The fact that Mr. Emery is a good guy is not relevant to the issue. That he's got a great personality and is a good guy. We have a lot of those folks around, folks. The fact is that we have to follow the rules and we have to follow the process. And quite frankly, you know, we all have to follow that. And for us not to follow it, it's a slap in the face to the people that follow the rules. It's not fair, especially when repeatedly he was told he needed to do this. I feel bad that he never contacted me and that he didn't speak tonight, that his neighbor spoke for him. So let's talk about the issue before us, and that issue is the fact that that there's a violation here. Why should it apply to everybody else and we select one or two folks that it doesn't apply to? That's not fair. There's no way that is fair. I mean, very few issues anger me, but this is just something that is just not an easy issue for me to justify. And I like to think that you know, that I go out of my way to make allowances for mistakes, but this was more than a mistake. This was an outright, you know, I'm going to do it my way, and I did it my way, and now you must, you know, overturn the planning commission. So, you know, I feel bad, but I'm sorry, but those are the facts. And they're before us, and that's what we have to determine. I'm not a lawyer, but I went to law school for a while, but you know, and I hate it when the lawyer comes out in me, but the fact is we have the rules that we have for obvious reasons.
I guess what I was looking for, Councilmember Garcia, was not absolution of the direct violation of ordinances and city codes and building permits. What I was looking for in terms of alternatives and what sanctions are available other than the two that have been presented. So this isn't about forgiveness. This is about trying to figure out if there is another option available that would stand in upholding the planning commission, at the same time trying to explore alternatives that will bring him into compliance or some sort of compliance without totally destruction the 36-foot garage that he built. So that it's looking for alternatives. It's not looking for forgiveness, okay?
Okay. Thank
So,
you.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to hit on a couple of factual things that were brought up in the public hearing. The setback here is 6 feet from the property line. Somebody had mentioned 12 or 13 feet at 6 feet. And the discussion has been kind of along the lines of either Mr. Emery would have been able, and I don't like to play Monday morning quarterback on this. Quite frankly, we don't know what would have happened if Mr. Emery had sought a variance prior to the process. We don't know how the planning commission, so it's impossible, and I don't want to play Monday morning quarterback. But it's been presented here tonight that the two choices were either to not build a garage or to tear down his maple tree in order to build a garage. The reality is he could have built a 33-foot wide garage and not torn down the maple tree. And the other thing I want to note, and I don't know if the AV person can put up the aerial imagery. It probably shows up best on the one that's labeled old garage, but the ones that say old garage and new garage, you'll see that next to the garage, there are 3 public utility boxes there. I don't know, I'm assuming they're XL Energies. That's one of the reasons we have this setback, is because utilities can put their utility boxes, other utilities in that easement area, and it's to ensure that there's adequate space around those. So I think people have come up with this idea that these setbacks are just there because city staff is frivolous about what measurements should be, or city code is onerous. There are reasons for these.
And once again, this is probably more directed to city attorney, but because the thing that struck me is that it's listed as 36 feet and 33 feet would have worked had he pulled the permit and had been reviewed and everything. And so whether or not it changes Councilmember Garcia's opinion or the vote of this council, I'm wondering if there's any consensus about pay for it, get the engineering, get something that verifies that it's well built as everybody claims it is, because we're not going to take anybody's word for it. We need somebody that's a professional who can tell us that, and then come with a plan to cut it back so it hits that 33 feet. So it's going to cost him money. It's a sanction. It keeps the garage on his property, but it's all on his nickel. We're not going to go out of our way to do anything to promote it, to push it, or to get any of the reports we're going to need, which may or may not convince us anyhow. And so if ultimately it comes down, it comes down. But I think that what I'm trying to figure out, if there's an alternative we can carve out on his nickel to figure out how he can convince us that 33 feet is well constructed and it fits the parameters.
Mayor Elliott, I do just want to clarify that what you're voting on tonight is to deny the variance or approve the variance. It does not say how he needs to come into compliance. It just says he needs to come into compliance. So if he could do that, if he can submit permits and show that this can be cut back by the 3 feet, meet the 6 foot, which is already a reduced setback, then he can do that. Then he can save the garage. You are just voting whether or not he can leave it at this 3 feet versus complying with the 6.
So I should have read it more carefully. So if we support city council or the planning commission's deniance of the variance, that doesn't construe, okay, you're done, tear it down.
That's correct.
He's got alternatives and he can do something along the lines that I've already suggested.
That's correct. Since we do not have plans, don't know if that's possible or not, but it is an option for him.
Okay, so I'll go ahead.
The city manager.
I saw it, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm sorry, I just couldn't help myself. I just have to interject something in this particular matter. In my 38 years here, this is not the first time something like this has come up. I think one of the more recent ones I can remember, and it's been a number of years ago, is someone who did something like that, built a garage that was way taller than was allowed, and did it without getting city permits to do it. And in my recollection in that particular case, now in this case you have residents, the neighbors coming in saying, this is great, it's a great looking garage, and he's upgraded the neighborhood and he's a great guy. In the other situation, as I can best remember, that wasn't the case. They didn't like the fact that it was high and it overshadowed the neighborhood and et cetera. And in the city council's wisdom back in that time, they told that particular person, you need to take the trusses out and redo the garage to bring it back into compliance. And, you know, that's obviously on your dime, and you should have got permission or sort of sought a permit before you went and did it. You know, in this particular case, this is a situation that really troubles me because, you know, people can make honest mistakes. That's one thing. But to come in here and have staff tell someone, not once or twice or 3 times, but even more than that, what he could or could not do, and then someone comes and basically just thumbs their nose at it, builds something without getting building permits. Now keep in mind, we have a fire department, for example. If that structure is to catch on fire, you know, we have to deal with something like that. Or anyone else who would decide to build anything without getting permits that we have to, you know, ultimately take care of one way or the other. Those kinds of things they're troubling to me. And, you know, again, one way or the other, I think that if someone can come in and knowingly build something that doesn't comply with what everyone else in this community has, number one, decided needs to be the standard for the community, for the good of the neighbors, for the good of the community, do it and, you know, be able to maintain that without having to correct it. I don't know, if it were me, why I would come in and get a permit or anything. If I were going to build something, I'd build it and then, you know, the whole thing, I'd ask for forgiveness rather than permission. But that's just my take on it. I mean, there are ways to deal with this and to rectify it, but there will be situations if people are allowed to do something like this where the neighbors are not going to come in here and be happy about it. I've seen it before in my time here, and if these kind of things happen, we'd see it again. And that's just my take on it. And one last thing, and Mary, you can comment on this. There was a case here in Minnesota not too long ago where someone did the same kind of thing on a lakeshore property. I think they built something too close to the lake, and it ended up going to court. My recollection is the court told them to take the place down.
Mr. Mayor and Council and City Manager, so as the Board of Appeals, in a sense, you as a body are acting as a court or a judge might in hearing an appeal. And I will tell you, I've seen after the fact variances, they happen occasionally. But whether it's before or after the fact, the same legal standard applies. And the legal standard is that the property owner has to show that there are practical difficulties in complying with the requirements of the ordinance. And so whether you were considering this before the fact or now, the same legal standard applies. And I would agree with Ms. Paleman that your decision here tonight is you're either to approve the variance and overturn the Planning Commission, or to affirm the Planning Commission's denial of the variance, and your decision would be that the property owner would need to come into compliance. How that happens is going to be up to the property owner if that's the decision of the City Council. And so there are still options available, as the staff has already noted, possible ways to make that happen. But it's really the council's role to make a decision one way or the other on the appeal issue.
Mr. Mayor, just a comment and a question. First, I think Councilmember Garcia and others are absolutely right that we as the council have to be worried about a precedent of setting if we have rules that govern how our city operates, and if someone is going to knowingly break them and we're just going to say there's zero consequence from that, that's a precedent that we have to be pretty concerned about. And I think just from the facts that stated, it's pretty clear on that point what occurred, and so that we shouldn't take that lightly. I also don't take lightly that an entire neighborhood's here sticking up for their neighbor, and I just have and John answered one of my questions about just a reason for the setback ordinance. Is there, this specific area, is there a practical challenge with where the garage currently states? I mean, obviously the neighbors have said they don't see a problem, but from a city perspective, outside of uniformity and whatnot, is there any practical considerations that creates problems for the city?
Councilmember Howard, we actually don't know. We don't, we'd have to look into the clearance requirements for those utility boxes. That's something that generally happens when a permit is pulled. And I have not contacted Excel Energy. I'm not sure if the building official has.
Thank you. And I guess kind of where I'm going with this is that I think the decision here tonight is very clear for us about whether to deny or grant the appeal, given the facts before us. In terms of the remedy, kind of as Council Member Troutman started down that path, I would be, and for the record, wanting to explore what remedies there are, and if we can find that, as we've heard the neighborhood is saying that they're not opposed to it, if there aren't practical considerations, I certainly would be open to finding some sort of remedy, a penalty of some kind that doesn't involve tearing down the whole garage. Clearly, we can't answer that tonight. Our city would have to inspect the garage. There's other issues, and there'd have to be willingness on the part of Mr. Emery to work with us on that as well. So I guess, I think on the choice tonight about adopting or denying, it's pretty clear. On the exact remedy, I think there's work to be done, and just for the record, I want us to explore those remedies.
If I may, Councilmember Howard, I appreciate your concerns. I'm not inclined to ask the city to do anything. If the homeowner wants to do something and present us with alternatives, I don't think the city's obligation is to go out and find a solution. It's to entertain anything he may bring to us and then make a decision. But I'm just not inclined to aid and abet violation of the ordinances. I'm loath to tear property down or tear construction down, and I'm not unaware of the feelings of the neighbors. And I think that's the reason we open it up. It's not going to get torn down. All we're doing is ratifying the planning commissions. If you have alternatives, if you want to meet the ordinances, then you do it, you do the engineering, you bring it in, and then come back before us, and we can make a decision based on what you think, or not what you think you can do, what you will do to come into compliance. And then we've got more meat on the bones, and we can make a decision at that time. But once again, I'm not inclined to let the city move forward in any respect in regards to finding a solution. So that's just my 2 cents.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just want to speak just for a moment to all the citizens and all the residents that came to speak, even one that expressed some concern of retaliation on the part of the planning commission. I just want to say on behalf of the planning commission, I know many of them personally. I would be shocked and, of course, incredibly disappointed if there is anything that approached retaliation. I don't believe that would be the case, but I do want to recognize it's not easy to come into this forum when you have that anxiety, and I want to thank you for doing that. And we are your representatives, and if anything were like that were to happen, all our phone numbers are published, and we want to hear from that. I say that with confidence in our commission members and our staff. But I also just want to respect any anxiety, and this should not be a place where people feel anxiety, because you shouldn't have anxiety, because you should come before you start building to talk and work with the city, because there are easements, if in fact there are easements, that those are third parties that may have rights, and that's another issue. So I echo what Councilmember Howard said. It's not clear to me, and I guess I have a question. If we're saying no to the variance, that requires that even if they were to do their due diligence and say they were fine, there was no harm to the easements or anything like that, they would still be obligated to move the property, right? There's no fine issue or there's no alternative, because I think we're talking about alternatives. It doesn't sound, I don't hear from what you guys have said that there is necessarily a third way.
Correct. If the variance were denied, he would have to bring it into conformance one way or another.
Is there any way for us to conditionally or provisionally grant the variance or extend the opportunity, giving them, like I think the mayor mentioned, this is not, we don't want to be a burden to staff, but I would be inclined to giving them an opportunity to say they're going to incur costs, but, and I think they should be significant, because I don't think they understand yet that you can't, this is not the way you do it. But I also don't want to see their property. Is there a third way that we could at all table this or conditionally?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call the question.
Go ahead.
Well, that means I'm ready to vote.
Is that a debatable? I think we can continue debate, Councilmember Garcia. I don't want to shut things. I think it's a helpful
I don't think there's anything to debate. We've pretty much hashed it over. It's an up or down vote ratifying the Planning Commission's denial of the variance. The language says the homeowner thus needs to bring it into compliance. Compliance it can be a lot of different things, and I think the first thing would happen, he should meet with staff and try to figure out and get a definition and see what options are available. We're not going to find any solutions, and tabling it doesn't do anything. We need to vote up and down and put the responsibility back where it lies. That's with the homeowner, with coming up with a plan, getting the engineering, coming in, satisfying staff that it is well constructed, and here's what I intend to do to bring it into compliance. I mean, there's no third alternative. There may be after he does what he has to do and presents it, but right now, we're rehashing and we're plowing old ground.
And I don't necessarily disagree. I'm just we have folks here that are listening, and if a council member has a question, wants to continue understanding this issue for their own mind about what to do, I'm just always hesitant to say that we're going to shut down that discussion and take a vote. That's just me, my personal.
Well, and what I'm saying is that it really is the responsibility of the applicant to approach city staff to work this out. I don't think we can work that out on his behalf or on anybody's behalf. It's really out of our hands. So that's what, I think we should vote on the motion, and the public hearing is closer. I think that we should, we have other pressing business at hand. I think that we should vote on the motion, and go on.
I agree.
So what I would like to do is I would move to adopt a resolution denying an appeal from the decision of the Planning Commission and affirming the Planning Commission's decision to deny a variance to reduce setback requirements for a garage at 6400 Pillsbury Avenue.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Let the record reflect that Councilmember Troutman is opposed. Moving on, item 7 is Councilmember Howard.
I have consideration of the approval of a second reading of an ordinance adding City Code Section 430 pertaining to shoreland management and a resolution authorizing summary publication. The purpose of the Shoreland Management Ordinance is to implement regulations concerning the use, development, and alteration of certain shore areas in the City of Richfield in compliance with directives and requirements of Minnesota statutes, Section 103F.221, Subdivision 1. These regulations are adopted in order to protect the natural characteristics of such shore areas to prevent pollution, minimize flood damage, and manage the effects of shore area crowding and development. A significant portion of the designated public waters within Richfield, that covers Wood Lake, Richfield Lake, and Legion Lake, are surrounded by parkland with no development possibilities. In areas where improvements on public or private lands surrounding these public waters have been proposed in the past, staff considered the Department of Natural Resources recommendations in all reviews. This ordinance would formalize those DNR recommendations at a city level with references specific to the public waters within Richfield's jurisdiction. There are 17 total properties within the setbacks of the 3 lakes. However, these properties will only be held to setback requirements should they redevelop. It is in the best interest to adhere to the DNR recommendations to ensure the wise development of shorelands of public waters and thus preserve and enhance the quality of surface waters, conserve the natural environment values, and provide for the wise utilization of waters and related land resources. And I would just ask staff if they have anything further.
No, I don't really have it. I don't have anything further. I do just want to bring up, I guess, that this is a requirement that we have this and that we have adopted what the DNR does, nothing more restrictive. And also having the ordinance allows us to look at variances, so it actually is more flexible to have the ordinance than not. It's my understanding. So.
Then I'll make the motion to approve a second reading of an ordinance adding City Code Section 430 pertaining to shoreland management, and approve a resolution approving summary publication of new City Code Section 430 pertaining to shoreland management.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution is, their motion is passed. Item number 8. This item for consideration involves a variety of land use approvals related to a proposal for construction of a new auto dealership at 1550 78th Street East. Maury's Automotive Group has submitted an application requesting approval of a rezoning and planned unit development plans that would allow construction of a new Jaguar, that's how the commercials go anyhow, I don't know. Land Rover dealership at 1550 78th Street East. This property is currently home to the Adler Graduate School and Jim Ramstead Community Service Center. This item was originally scheduled for consideration by the council on November 28, 2017. However, the council and the applicant agreed to delay consideration until tonight in order to allow staff and the applicant to continue to work on design issues. The property at 1550 78th Street East is zoned mixed-use regional and is guided for regional commercial within the I-494 corridor master plan area. The applicant has submitted revised plans since the date of the Planning Commission hearing on October 23rd. Staff has reviewed these plans for agreement with the zoning code and comprehensive plan requirements and found that improvements from the previous plan have been made. However, the plans continue to be non-compliant with a number of requirements. I'm going to stop there and make a couple comments and then get some advice from staff and the other council members. The staff report on this is about 5 pages and basically kind of sets the tone that Maury's has accommodated a lot of the requests / demands staff has made on them, but they haven't done enough, so they are good neighbors, but they're not going to get the Good Neighbor Award because we may not ask them to join our neighborhoods. With that being said, I'm hesitant to run through the litany of deviations and everything that are listed in the zoning and a lot of the others that are applicable to mixed use. And I'm hesitant because we have expert reports from 2 market analysis, one hired by Maury's, one hired by the city, that basically say mixed use in that area is non-viable. So I'm wondering, number one, why we're even dealing with mixed use zoning violations if it's not viable based on a comp plan that is 12 to 13 years old and a new comp plan in the works. And we've listened, we gave credit to the people that came in regards to the garage. Let's give credit to the people that stood up and spoke about the benefits Maury's is going to have to our community. Let's talk about the benefit the chair of the school board talked about, the working arrangement that not only Maury's has, but another auto dealership who is in the neighborhood to create jobs, training, internships, and everything else. So I'm trying to figure out a way to have a debate. And God bless open meeting laws because we need to do this up here. We don't have an opportunity to sit down as a group and really talk turkey with each other. And I find that offensive to some extent, but I understand the transparency and understand that people are loath to have us close the doors because they think we're going to cook the books and do something against them. So we're going to have the debate here tonight. And, you know, I'm tempted to call a shadow vote to see where we stand, so I know how much I need to rant, how much I need to demand, how much I need to put together a closing argument that will be extemporaneous and may take anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. That being said, staff have any comments?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I don't know that I would necessarily disagree with anything you just said, aside from the ranting portion. What you have to consider here is an issue of role definition. Again, if I were at that dais.
I wrote that down.
Yeah.
You want me to tell you what I'm going to say about role?
Well, look, let me just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
If I were at that dais, I might feel differently about this topic. You know, the role of the city council is to set ordinances and policies, including planning policies, and the role of staff is to enforce those ordinances and policies. In this case, the city council as a body, and it wasn't the 5 of you, it was the city council writ large, the city council from some bygone era, but still the city council that adopted the I-494 corridor plan. Staff is simply not empowered to say whether it's a good plan or not.
Understood.
I would share my thoughts with you on whether it's a good plan or not, but in the context of a staff recommendation, I don't have that power. You do.
Okay. Thank you.
I will just leave it at that.
And I appreciate, and let me say this. And it's like I said earlier, this isn't a criticism of those that went before us. It is an acknowledgement that the aspirations and view that were discussed and put down on paper as a comp plan from 2005 to 2007, 2008 don't even closely resemble the world we're living in today and the development and what's happened in that corridor, what's going to happen now because we've got the funding and all that. But what has changed, and I'm going to quote, and this is nice because I have an admitted bias. I've been for this project since it was presented to us the first time, understanding that there needed to be some tweaks. And there's an acknowledgement in the report here that they've worked very hard to meet a lot of the things. The things they can't change is what they're, even though they still think that it meets it based on a similar construction half a block away. But I don't want to go there tonight. But here's what I want to say, and this gives the best definition. And basically, and this is in the staff report that was presented to us, the recommendation of staff, which is to deny the application, should be viewed in the context of staff's role of enforcing city policy, rather than creating new policy or modifying existing policy. Exactly what you said. Whereas the city council is elected for very purpose of forming such a policy based on the public interest of the community. In the opinion of staff, the proposed use does not adequately meet the vision set forth in the comp plan. I have, since we first talked about the vision in that comp plan, I said it was wonderful and it was an aspiration at that time. It's not relevant today. It's still there, but it's not relevant. And what I would like to point out, and in terms of the differentiation between our role up here as policymakers, which I'm constantly reminded by City Manager Devich is what we do, and it always comes up when it's a tough question. So I appreciate that. I like to get the tough ones. But when I think about this, I think of form over substance, which is an accounting principle that first became well known back in the Enron days, where form is doing it by the book and dotting the I's. And so in that context, it's about the presentation. In this case, the presentation and how does that match up with codes, ordinances, comp plans, and guidelines. Substance. You can have form. If you don't have substance, you got nothing. Substance is defined as do what you mean what you say, and does it bring value? There is no one in this room that can tell me that what Maury's proposal has been presented and what's been attested to by people coming up there and what they've done in working towards this brings value. It brings people to the city, it brings tax dollars. There's even a statement in here says that we talked about the levy, 6.11 versus 4.9. Just one commercial property going in like Maury's is planning to do over there has the potential of reducing every residential homeowner's taxes in the city. It has the potential to create a valuable training program, internship, and scholarships, which they are all in their list of commitments. But more importantly, we had the chair of the school committee standing up there saying they are excited. They talked to us when we had our joint meeting about trying to move away from this myth that if you don't have a 4-year college education, you can't, you're unemployable. We're talking about trades. We're talking about technicians that make $75,000, $80,000 a year, and we're talking about 65 jobs proposed. But I'll remind you that when Richfield Bloomington Honda came in, they anticipated 90 jobs. They got 180 jobs in our community now. So you tell me how we are going to select form over substance. To me, it's a no-brainer. So that's my little, once again, another soliloquy. I got to quit doing that. But, and I don't want to step on staff toes. You went to the trouble of preparing this report. And I think that for purposes of the record, you need to go through it, at least hit the high points or whatever you think is relevant. But before we do that, I just want to refer to one other thing, and this is the report that we received on November 17th. This was anticipation of the November 28th meeting when Maury's was first going to come before us. And this is a report comparing and contrasting the commercial analysts that did an appraisal and a best use and kind of overview of the properties. Once again, one retained by Maury's, one retained by us. And I think what is illuminating, if not illustrative, of why we need to pass this resolution is comments that start with, while the analyses that were performed by Mr. Rausch and and Mr. McComb were conducted independently, they both reached some similar conclusions, including high land costs, including demolition for the property, make it infeasible for apartment development, one of our aspirations at this time, and a combination of an overabundance of hotel rooms currently in the area, site constraints, and high land values make this property an unlikely candidate for hotel development, another one of our aspirations. In addition, the applicant's analysis concluded that the larger area does not have the characteristics required for a successful mixed-use district and that industrial use would not be appropriate. They go on to say this site would make sense for a car dealership, and in this case, not just a car dealership, a high-end car dealership that is going to bring people with disposable income to our community to spend money, visit, and become attuned with what Richfield has to offer. So that's it for me. I have a bias, but that's why I use statements made by other people to try to support what I'm trying to say. Comments?
I wouldn't want to go up against Mayor Ellett in the courtroom. I agree with much of what the mayor said. Where I would differ is I do think that the process on something like this does matter as well. Form and substance matters when you're making a consideration that's going to be a 30, 40-year decision. And in some ways, I think the process has been, I just want to revisit that a little bit, where we had this idea before us as a council. And I think to a T, all of us said we need more information. That was our first read of this project. And our staff got to work, Maury's got to work preparing their plan, delivering more details, and we all began to learn more information about the proposal. And for me, one of the first questions really was, does a car dealership make sense for this location? Is that the best value or best use of this space? Initially, we didn't have enough information to answer that question. Mayor Elliott talked about the economic report, or the compiled by folks with Maury and the city, came to the conclusion, I think, as Mayor stated well, that a car dealership is a reasonable use of the space, and some of the other alternatives that were discussed are less reasonable, at least in the near term. So we gain that information. And then the next question is, well, is this a good plan? I guess that's where I would really like to hear a fair amount from staff about what has transpired in terms of and probably to go through some of the memo to talk about both where this plan started and some of the discussion about and changes that have been made. And then as we look at our zoning requirements, where are they in compliant? Where are they not? Where have they responded to staff's request to make changes? Where have they not? That kind of information, I think, is important to the overall decision. But I think what we're trying to answer here still is does this bring value? Is this the right choice for the community? So I think the stage is set well. I would just like to hear more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I think this really boils down to two issues, and we've talked about the first one, and that is there wide buy-in for the vision for that? So let's just set that aside, because it's clear that there is not wide buy-in. We don't have an alternative right now. The second issue then comes down to the actual proposal, the actual site. What my opinion is, my opinion is that we're really dealing with a 5-acre Jaguar Land Rover dealership on 3.21 acres. When you look at all of we've got a list of, 25 things that we're looking at with setbacks and open space and parking spaces, all of those things. If this were a 5-acre site, we'd be able to go down that list of 25 things and say, check, 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 check. It's not a 5-acre site. Richfield, by its nature, is always going to have sites that are too small for the uses. But so I don't want to sit here. I don't think it'd be a good use of our time to sit here and go through each item point by point. I will say that some of staff's main concerns were that there is an apartment building, a 40-unit apartment building, that would be situated, if this were approved, between an Audi dealership and a Jaguar Land Rover dealership. And it would be, at least for the present time, kind of an island. We were concerned about the way that the proposed dealership fronted that apartment building, and we shared those concerns with the Morris folks. In an ideal world, that side that facing the apartment buildings would be more of a front door than a back door. Right now, it's got a lot of loading docks. It's got a lot of utility kinds of things. It really is a back door. In a perfect world, that'd be the front door. We asked them to look at flipping the building, making that the front door side. And they had some practical difficulties in doing so. Practical difficulties that are understandable with how semis would load and unload vehicles and those kinds of things. So they asked themselves what could they do, or what did they feel that they could do. And they did expand the boulevard area along Bloomington Avenue facing that area. They added benches and seat walls and landscaping. They reduced overhead doors from, 11 to 7. They added some windows. So they've made some progress there. Staff is also concerned about the walkability of this corridor. And personally, I haven't ever heard anybody say walkability is not part of the vision. I think anywhere in Richfield, walkability is part of the vision. And we do have continuing concerns about the walkability here. The nature of doing plans is that they change over time, and I'm not faulting Maury's, but we get plans in that we don't always have time to evaluate like we'd like to. The most recent plan has a tall retaining wall on 77th Street with a guardrail fence that's required by code if a retaining wall is taller than a certain amount, and that's the front door. I don't think that lends itself to a walkable community. I'd like to see them, if you were to consider approving this, I'd like to see them do a better job at having an at-grade entrance on 77th Street and not having such tall retaining walls and railings. Give me 1 second to get some of my thoughts together. We had asked them early on to make it a legitimate multi-story building. They did add 3 feet to the height of the building. And when I say legitimate multi-story, what I really mean is not a 1-story building with a parking ramp. You know, a building that has active uses on more than 1 floor. So they did add 3 feet to the building height and included about 10,000 square feet of mezzanine office space. It's not entirely clear to me how that space will be used, but they did add that. There's a property adjacent to this that we'll just refer to as the EcoSmart property that right now has an access on 78th Street, that is a bit of a difficult access. And right now, in practical terms, they have an access on 77th Street. In legal terms, I'm not sure that they have that access. You know, I've never seen anything that that grants that access. My understanding is there was a kind of a quote-unquote handshake agreement with the prior owner for EcoSmart to be able to access that property. The concern is, and maybe this is a misplaced concern, maybe this shouldn't be the concern of city staff, but my concern is that at some point, MnDOT is likely to widen 494 and is likely to eliminate 78th Street. That would eliminate that the access for the EcoSmart property and would make it a landlocked property. Now, MnDOT would have the responsibility of dealing with that. That's a fact. The other fact, though, is regardless of how MnDOT were to deal with it, the city would be left with a landlocked property there that nobody could access. And so we've asked Maury's to, if there's a solution for that, I think, and I don't want to speak for them, but I believe their feeling was the ideal solution for them would have been to purchase the property and just eliminate the concern that way. That wasn't able to happen, and they were not able to find other ways of addressing that concern. And we asked them to look at adding an accessory use to make it a mixed use project. And that I appreciate that it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, that the market may not be there like we would like it to be. I will say that Maury's, and I believe them, they approached Starbucks to talk about maybe some co-location there of some type. And Starbucks indication, my recollection was that the traffic counts weren't not sufficient for them to locate there. That sounds right to me. We asked them for the outdoor space to be usable, usable in some way to the community. I think that they made some improvements on the Bloomington frontage with the seat walls and some areas. I would say they came probably short of where Audi did with the plaza that was constructed. And they we asked them to reduce their parking, and they did reduce it to the maximum that the city code allows. The parking, I'm a little loath to push too stringent of parking standards on them, because the parking is what it is. You know, we can sit here and say, you know, you need to show fewer parking spaces on your site. Those cars are going to go somewhere, and I'd rather them be on their site than on neighboring properties' sites or on roads around. So that's a rundown, basically, of some of the things that we had asked them to look into, that and their responses. You know, and I've said this from day one, back when we've had a work session on this last summer. It's nothing about the Maury's organization, nothing about a Jaguar Land Rover dealership that city staff is opposed to. I believe we've had a good working relationship with the Maury's folks. That relationship has improved. It's never been bad. It's been enhanced over the last month, I would say, and I would hope that if there were some outstanding issues, that good relationship could be a benefit to addressing those. So I don't know that I answered Councilmember Howard's question. I answered a lot of questions, but I'm not sure they were all asked.
Very helpful, but you evoked a few more questions. One of them, well, first, generally, the progress is meaningful to me. You know, one of the biggest concerns I had was how the building will front the apartment building, and it's positive to see those improvements. The access concern for EcoSmart does concern me a great deal, especially in the event that we could have a landlocked issue for EcoSmart there. And how we make this a walkable corridor, I think no matter what, as you stated, no matter what vision, I think that's a key part of it. I guess this is a question procedurally. Is it possible to condition any of these things, or what would be the process if we want to continue working forward to address some of these issues? It's great to hear that the workings with staff, and we can see some of that in the improvements that are made here. So I do have confidence in that work, but procedurally, is there a possibility to condition some of those things with our approval, or?
So I'll answer it from a practical standpoint, and then let Mary answer it from a legal standpoint. From a practical standpoint, yes. Most of these could be addressed as stipulations or conditions. From a legal standpoint,
Same answer.
Okay.
I mean, yes, I think as part of your approval, if there are questions about specific conditions, you know, we can address those, and if there are any potential legal concerns about imposing certain conditions, we can certainly address those too. But the short answer is yes, you can. Your approval can have conditions attached.
A follow-up question is, I see on one hand we come up with some language on the spot with a condition that might sound good here tonight, but then practically implementing that, I can foresee, you know, challenges as well. Is there other ways to, beyond conditioning, are there other decision points that the city makes in terms of permitting and otherwise that allows us to continue to work with Maury's if we didn't want to go down the route of, you know, conditions, that kind of thing?
well, I think one way you could address it, and maybe Mary has other thoughts, and as much as I would like to just rip this Band-Aid off, would be to ask the Maury's folks for a little more time. I think, again, I don't want to put myself in their shoes, but I think if I were them and were asked to give more time, I'd want some assurances that it was going to lead to a positive outcome, possibly. More time to explore some of these conditions. You know, for example, I say, you know, I'd like to see an at-grade entrance on 77th Street. We haven't had a great deal of conversation with them about that. There may be engineering reasons that's just impossible. I don't know. So I'd rather, instead of having that be a condition tonight, and the mayor hits his gavel and it's over, and then we come back and say, well, those conditions aren't possible. I'd rather come back to you in 2 weeks, or quite frankly, in 2 weeks or the following meeting, with some more well thought out conditions based on what we hear from you tonight in the conversation that may happen.
Those are my questions. I'd love to hear from other council members too.
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Well, when I first saw this proposal, I didn't like it. And I didn't like it because we were talking about a fourth car dealership. That's the only reason. I'd have nothing against Maury's dealership. But let me start off first by thanking city staff, because they have really done a terrific job in really looking at this issue with a magnifying glass and trying to work on what our policy should be, what the comprehensive plan and the zoning issues are, and work with Maury's dealership. They have done an outstanding job. They have worked really hard. So to John and Melissa, I really appreciate your hard work and constantly being available to talk to the council members, as this issue has progressed. So having said all of that, let me tell you, when Mayor Elliott talked about former council members and how they decide, well, every decision that we make is going to impact other council members in the future, probably. And the thing is that, when in the olden days, and that was before the majority of the council was around, the city council wanted this to be a bedroom community. They didn't want to serve liquor. They didn't want to have restaurants and hotels that served liquor. They wanted it to be a nice bedroom community. And that was fine. But, suddenly, we know that we need tax base, and the tax base alleviates property taxes. So that's where we wound up. We have a lot of challenging areas in Richfield. We have a lot of imperfect lots. Maury dealership is going to be wants to build is a very imperfect lot. I mean, it's not ideal, but they've tried to work with it. I also think they came in with a very weak proposal. We asked them to go back, and city staff wanted to go back and work with them. I think they came back with a significantly different, stronger, better worked out proposal than I thought was possible. So I want to say that. And I also look at, how long before we have another proposal before us? I don't know. Is it going to be 3 years, 5 years? We don't know. It could be as much as 10 years. So we just don't know what's going to happen. One of the things that, when I met with the folks at the Maury dealership, I asked them one thing. I said, what kind of a corporate citizen are you going to be aside from joining the Chamber of Commerce? I said, I have a high expectations that you're going to come to the table and you're going to be a good corporate citizen. And I mentioned a number of things to them. And they have really, I think, reached out and try to comply with some of the requirements and some of the needs that we have in the community. And I think Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez will talk about this later, about the schools. So I will leave that up to her. But there's other things that they could do. And I wish that I don't think that Ann is here from the Chamber of Commerce, but this is one of the things that we should, as a council, are you here, Ann? Oh, okay. One of the things that we should work with the chamber is that every business that comes in, I think we should ask them to be good corporate business citizens. And I just jotted down some ways. For one thing, we've got loaves and fishes here at Hope Presbyterian, and then at one of the churches. So we have 2 facilities that serve loaves and fishes. You know, it would be nice if they would commit to serving once a month, buying the food, cooking it, and serving it once a month. We also have the Richfield Foundation, which does a tremendous work, you know, in terms of social service needs. I can almost guarantee them a place at the table, for them to be members, for them to participate in the community in that regard. We also have the 4th of July parade. They could help in that regard and donate money and make that happen. We have PennFest. We have so many things that we need, you know, an infusion of new people. And the quality of our community, it binds with the residents and the business community, and we should all move towards that end. You know, this is still not a proposal that I want to vote for, but I will say one thing, that what I'm looking at right now is the fact that I'm looking at the future. This happens, fine, okay? But there's also, I think, a possibility that the existing businesses that are in that area, on that strip, you know, their land is going to increase quite a bit, especially once that underpass goes through. And there's a possibility that other folks are going to come in and want to buy those properties and turn them into something else that will be bigger revenue boosters. Who knows? But there's a lot of possible development also that could take place at the Cedar Avenue corridor. And because I think the MSP is continually expanding, and I think they will expand outside their borders. So I have worked with staff and asked them to come up with, with some other ideas that how we can make this work a lot better, and they have done that. What I'm going to propose is, I know what the mayor, I know what his motion will be, is that if Maury would agree to waiting until at least the 23rd, or possibly even longer, so that the city can work to accommodate the requirements, that's needed before.
Yeah, and Councilmember Garcia, I misspoke earlier. If the direction is to go forward with this is a first reading tonight, so they would need to come back in 2 weeks anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
But but they could even come back maybe 3 weeks or 4.
I'd rather get this done right than get it done fast.
Okay.
You know.
Well, okay, so let's leave they have to come back anyway, but let's leave it open in case if we need more time. I don't know.
Well, I think some of that is at their discretion, based on our the 120-day clock for making land use decisions.
Okay, but I have what I intend to offer as a friendly amendment to Mayor Elliott's motion. So at that point, I will offer that friendly amendment, but I will support the first right now first reading. The first reading, thank you. So I will support the first reading of this, and hopefully we can continue to work on it, and that Mayor Elliott will accept the friendly amendment, and we will continue to work to strengthen this, because I think it's to everybody's benefit.
Just for a point of reference, in the staff report, if you look at recommended action, the paragraph ahead of that is kind of the action for you to take if you want to go the direction of approving Maury's. So that might be helpful.
Say that again, John.
The paragraph above recommended action, I'll just read it aloud. How about that? If the council believes that the proposal does or should fit the overall vision for the
All right.
area
Got
and
it.
meets requirements for rezoning, the following actions should be taken tonight.
All right, great. Got it.
I would just like to add a couple things before we move forward, but I have been one of the council members who hasn't, known exactly how I was going to vote on this because I really need to talk to as many folks as possible in the community. I'm talking to stakeholders like the school, the Chamber of Commerce, other stakeholders. So, I really need to look at everything and make sure that every stone is unturned. And after doing so, the reason why I am here and the reason why we are here is, to have that balance, as Mayor Elliott talks about form over substance, but we are here to make those hard decisions and navigate the tensions as it relates to policies that guide our community, and a lot of times contradictions, and we take chances constantly with the votes that we make. We don't know exactly all of the unintended consequences that will come, and that's why we do our homework. And we have to face the reality that we have here in Richfield. And there's a lot of things that make this community a great place to be, and that's why we are all here. And there's a lot of realities that make it difficult. There's a lot of constrictions that we have that other communities might not have. So, you sit down and you do as much work as possible, and you take the long view, and you look at what the impact is short term and long term, and you make a hard decision. And, after doing so, I'm in support of moving forward with this proposal. And I was in the meeting with the school district, and they did talk about not just, they really stepped up their commitments to our community and to our district. They also talked about in their letter they submitted quite a while back their commitment to our community, especially as it relates to jobs, and there's a whole other list. But we don't, as a community and as a city, we don't take those commitments lightly, and we understand that that was a written letter submitted to us, but that's your word to our community, and we expect Maury's to deliver on that. So that's just 2 cents I wanted to provide.
Thank you. Howard, anything else?
I just, the commitment to our schools is very important. It's one of the things that the very first time we heard for them that Maury said, and I thought that was very good. And I know that there's been more definition around that. I'm wondering if that could be shared in some way. I think there was, it's my understanding there's.
Yes, there is a letter that was shared with, where is Lynn here? Where, from Maury's?
Lynn is right there.
Where? Oh, there you are. Sorry, there's somebody blocking you. So there is a letter. There is a letter that can be shared with the city council, correct? Okay.
Articulating the commitment to the community.
I mean, it might be worthwhile. I mean, I just think that that's part of the discussion, and I really do appreciate that that's a commitment that's made, and I think it's part of the decision-making process for us.
As it relates, as it relates to the apartments, that was a difficult decision to make, and I also think that I would like to hear from Maury's or staff what the conversations have been with the adjacent apartments, and that's something for us as a community and staff to make sure. If and when any changes happen, we don't know at this point, but that's something that is important.
I would just comment on that, Councilmember Reagan-Gonzalez. It's my understanding, or it's been represented to me, that offers were made to purchase property on both sides. And both sides asked for prices that probably were 3 times the value. So the owners are aware of the impact and aware of the value of the land going up and are waiting for a better offer. It's my belief, and it's not that I'm against that apartment complex, but that apartment complex is 70 years old and hasn't been upgraded in 70 years. something is going to go in there at a very high price and replace that apartment building. Maury's tried to buy it. They were waiting for a higher price. So that was one thing. And the one thing I need to suggest, John, when we talk about, and I see the access for EcoSmart, whether Maury's buys that property or someone else, they're going to have the same problem. So I'm hesitant to make too many demands on somebody, because somebody else could come in and say the same thing. Why? It's not my problem.
That's right.
So with that being said, whatever we can negotiate, whatever concessions we can get from Maury's, I think is in the bank, as opposed to what may or may not be coming down the road, may not even talk to us about it. So I see that as kind of a red herring, saying we need to resolve that, because I don't know that it can be solved. And I don't know what EcoSmart is going to demand in terms of access anyhow, and I'm really uncomfortable having him drive the negotiations. So I don't know that we've got an answer to that question, whether it's dealing with Maury's or dealing with someone 2, 3, 5 years down the road that comes in is going to have the same problem. So I think we do what we can, but if we can't accommodate them, if we can't get some provisional commitment to create an easement of some sort, creating the access, then I don't think we push that button, because it's a problem that's there now, and it's going to be whoever comes in if we somehow drive Maury's out of our community.
So, on two different things. First, to go back to the letter, I'm not going to read the whole letter, but a couple things that are relevant, and they were somewhat discussed before, but I think it's again a testament to the commitment that Maury's has put together, this letter to the city, and that's a piece of accountability here, and that they will work collaboratively to develop an auto-based classroom to serve students within Richfield Public Schools. That's huge. That's very impressive. We will commit to significant finances toward these goals over the next 3 years of development, and will work in partnership with Richfield Schools to bring other auto industry leadership in Richfield to request similar commitments. I mean, that's significant, and it's part of the decision-making process. So I just wanted to call that out and make sure that's part of the decision-making process. And I know I'm all over the place here, but now to go to EcoSmart, the notion of whether they should sell or not and have that opportunity, it's obviously within any business's right to decide what they want to do. So I just do have reservations about taking an action that is going to negatively impact a business. And so I don't know and I don't know what the friendly amendment that Councilmember Garcia has prepared, but that's an issue that I just want us to continue to explore, because that is a part of our community. And for me, just to go back to where I was at about these questions that we have to ask ourselves, if we're going to take this step, does this bring value to the community? And I think we're seeing, as part of this discussion, I would say it does. We have, of course, there's a tax base that's been discussed that's bringing to the city. We have a commitment to our schools. We have a new facility in Richfield that we didn't have before. The other question, what is the alternative? I think is there something better? The studies we've shown, at least to me, at least in the near term, perhaps even beyond near term, I'm not sure that there is that alternative. And then the other question is this a good plan? Is this going to create issues within our community, problems? I think they've made their plan better, especially in terms of addressing the issue with how this building is going to face the neighbors. But there's still some issues with that, with respect to EcoSmart, with respect to the entrance in 77th and the walkability. And so those are questions I would hope that there's just a way for us to continue to wrestle with, to take that next step to make improvements. And so that's, I'm done with my soliloquy, Mr. Mayor, but that's where I'm at so far right now.
Member Troutman, you have been noticeably quiet.
I have. I thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Minutes, would you sign?
I'll sign it. Would you like my address, Mr. Mayor? A couple things. I think the Maury's application has improved from the time we first started talking. And I want to acknowledge, I think from the beginning, they've approached this this issue with good faith. Additionally, we asked for more information, and they gave us more information, and they provided the market analysis. And and particularly myself, I asked for our own team to do a market analysis, and they did, and I appreciated that. I have more questions, and I sat down with our analyst and asked more questions. And I am persuaded that this application could in fact be the best use, the highest and best use for this property. I am still concerned about the boulevard issue and about the grading issue. I think this isn't just about them, but it's about our community. It's about that whole development corridor. And I thanked our transportation leadership team in our work session. I thank them again for taking extra time and extra hours for me just walking through what those developments in that corridor have been and what they will be, because however popular this is or this isn't in the moment, this isn't a question for the moment. This is a question that is for not the ages, but for generations, right? For a couple generations. And that's not something that residents need to be focused on, but it is something that we need to be focused on. And with all that focus in mind, I think this could be a really good a really good opportunity. And I appreciate, and I need to acknowledge this also, I really appreciate every time residents and citizens come in and express their views, either by emails, which I've appreciated, which have been on both sides, phone calls, which have been on both sides, but I think overwhelmingly in favor of this, and I'd recognize that too. It is important. It does make a difference, and I thank everybody on every side of that issue. But with in mind that this is a corridor that's going to develop, I think, very healthily in the next 20 and 40 years, preserving that boulevard, preserving that that face where that grading is not off-putting to not just current businesses but future residents, and not just current residents but future residents. Those are still important issues, and so to the extent that we can address those, that remains a concern of mine.
Any additional comments? Staff? Mary? City Attorney, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If I could just chime in on some process here and talk to you about the alternative. What I'm hearing is if the council is going down the path of possible approval, Mr. Stark pointed out the paragraph right before the recommended action.
Correct.
With the 3 bullet points. I want to just for a moment draw your attention to the second and third bullet points there. There's been a lot of discussion about the project. I'm going to throw a little bit of a wet blanket on it here and say we have to look back at the land use requirements for this specific approval or decision that you'll be making ultimately. And so bullet point number 2 talks about articulating specific findings of compliance that the staff, which would allow the staff to come back with a revised resolution of approval, if that's the direction the council is going. And if you scroll up further in the staff report, there are a number of factors relating to a rezoning decision for a PUD, which is one of the applications before you. There are six factors there. And I won't read them all to you, but I'll let John chime in here as well. But it would be particularly helpful for the staff to be able to come back to you with a revised resolution for the council to provide some thoughts about those 6 factors relating to a rezoning in terms of an approval, so that staff knows with some more specificity what the council's specific rationale is on those points. And then the third bullet point is that we will need the applicant to authorize an additional extension of the clock to extend the deadline for a final decision to January 23rd. And I would at least like
for them to get a nod of the head, so that we know that we have authorization for that.
Peter just nodded.
Okay.
Correct, Peter? Okay. If I may be so bold as to suggest, if you hearken back to my description of form over substance, bullet points and items 1 through 6 are form. We gave you a hint or an indication of what the policy is. So I would suggest, I mean, to sit here tonight and articulate, when we development must conform to the comprehensive plan, you know what I would probably say to that, and it's not going to work. So I'm wondering if staff isn't better trained and more suitable to answering those questions, and we rely on staff on 99% of the stuff that's involved in that. So for us to sit up here now and try to articulate it, I don't think we're going to do a very good job, and it's going to have to get rewritten anyhow. Now, I don't want to put additional work on John's plate because I know that he's overloaded as it is, but that seems to me it should come from the staff side as opposed to this side.
Fair enough, Mayor. I wasn't asking that we hash out specific wording for specific findings right here and now.
Okay,
That was
well,
not
I
that was
appreciate
not my
that.
that was not my intention.
I appreciate that.
I think that, and we have heard a lot of information here tonight, and I think that we have some guide as to what you're thinking about this project. I think though it is, to make staff's job. I'll let maybe John speak to this.
Okay.
Because they're the ones who are, with
I just
maybe
dum-
with
I
my
just dumped
assistance,
on,
but
yeah.
they're the ones who are going to be in the position of having to draft a resolution
Right.
to come back to you with.
Well, first of all, since I have a microphone and nobody can reach over from that far to turn it off,
Little do you know.
I would say we're living in an evolving world, and in the past, I think we've talked a lot about either or, and I think we're moving into a both and world, and I think it's not either form or substance, it's both form and substance. They're both important, and we will try to take what you've told us tonight and craft it into the form.
And I can't speak for anyone else, but my guess is that if asked, we will collaborate, work, review, come in, meet, and try to assist in every way we can to get it put to an acceptable manner. Okay, we've got the nod. I've dumped on John. And so at this time, I believe we have reached the point where I will move the council approve a first reading of the attached ordinance rezoning 1550 78th Street East from mixed-use regional to planned mixed use, and articulate specific findings of compliance on which staff could draft a revised resolution approving the requested conditional use permit, and request that the applicant authorize an additional extension of the statutory clock to extend the deadline for a final decision until January 23rd, 2018, in order to provide adequate time for a second reading of the requested rezoning and approval of resolution approving the requested conditional use permit.
Second.
Wait a minute, I'd like to add a friendly amendment if I could.
Yes, excuse me.
Please do.
Okay, here's my friendly amendment. Number one is we would want them to provide an at-grade access from 77th Street sidewalk to an 77th Street facing door. You understand that? So it would go from the door to the sidewalk, the entrance. And the retaining walls and railings cannot exceed 36 inches in height combined along 77th Street. Third, the lighting must meet code requirements. Fourth, the applicant must meet all stormwater requirements. Fifth, impervious surface cannot exceed allowable maximums, because there is some concern at the staff level that reducing the parking might lead to spillover along city streets, and that it's not permitted, but it's difficult to enforce on a continual basis. And then what I would like is maybe the applicant should consider a negotiation to access agreement with the adjacent parcel, EcoSmart. I agree with Mayor Elliott, that, they don't have to, but, in the spirit of good faith, they should at least consider it and see what they can work out. And that's my friendly amendments.
I would support it.
I would second the friendly amendment. Do we have a second on the original motion?
I second.
Okay.
Okay.
The friendly amendment?
I think it makes sense for Morris to have the opportunity to clarify if we're,
Well,
if we can.
I think when staff gets together with Maury, I think they would work on that, right?
Well, I think it's just a clarification, correct?
Oh, sure. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. Peter Coyle on behalf of Morris. I won't belabor the issues with you tonight. We appreciate the direction you've given. The concern we have and the question we are posing to you, the grade differentials on 77th, in our opinion, and we'll work with this with staff, in our opinion, that challenge cannot be overcome physically. And so I guess the question I would ask is, if we work with staff and we do our best to try to address that, I just want to be clear on the record here tonight that we have a very serious concern that that condition cannot be satisfied. And so I would hope that would not by itself be an impediment to moving forward, but I can only ask that as a question of you and assure you that we will work on it in good faith with your staff.
Mr. Stark?
Well, I would say that the at-grade entrance is a solution. Maybe we'd be better off focusing on the problem. And the problem is to have a community-friendly entrance on 77th Street. And we would like to see some improvements over what is currently shown on the plan to accomplish that. Whether that means changes in grades or whether there are other ways of doing that, staff is open.
That makes sense.
Okay, so it's an acknowledged issue that's going to be worked on.
We'll do our
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. No, and I'm glad you mentioned good faith because that's the only way to work this issue out.
Thank you very much.
Subject to the clarification that's was articulated by council and also by City Community Development Director. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The resolution pass. Thank you all for the wonderful comments, input, debate, dialogue,
For
and
coming to our
agreement
exciting
to let John do the heavy lifting from this point on.
And while you might think you're passing this along to me, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that the bulk of the work that has happened on this has been from Melissa Paleman, and I expect she will be the recipient of more work after tonight.
I always know that, but I hesitate to congratulate her because I want to keep her working hard.
Right,
so.
and you have to remember role definition. It's like the Queen versus the Prime Minister. That's the role differentiation.
Got it. Well, in that case, Ms. Peelman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down. Next item is item 10, discussion regarding city council attendance at the, no.
9.
Item 9, consideration of designating representatives. If everybody scrolls down, what I'm going to do is let's just walk through the various assignments. And Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez was interested in continuing on her current positions.
Yep.
And from my perspective, if somebody has a desire to want to maybe participate in a different commission, let's talk about it with whoever's the lead now, or if we can just keep these in place for a year. I'm open to any suggestions on how you want to do that. I'm happy with what I do and where I am. The question I've got, Councilmember Howard, is the I-35 Solutions Alliance. I guess my assumption that I was lead. You got one Wednesday morning if you can get there.
The 494,
No, 490 or 494, but the I-30W Solutions is Thursday morning here.
yes, yep.
Oh, you will be?
I'm on that commission. I sent you an email. That's one I've just timing-wise this
Okay.
last year has been
Because
a bit of a challenge.
I've gone, and if you can go Thursday, let me know when you can't go.
Sure, we can
And
continue to.
Jack is there also.
Yes, yes,
So we've got a voice at the table.
indeed.
But, Mr. Mayor, I think Councilmember Troutman doesn't have any.
Right, and
Right.
that was my main guidance
How did that happen?
because he wasn't here.
Right.
We give him what we don't want.
Why don't we do this? There's four of us. Pick four, and we'll name you to two and have you alternate for two. And whoever gets bumped gets bumped.
Sounds good. Do you want me to do that right now?
Sure. Well, yeah, do we need it on the record tonight, or can
I have a couple questions about the committee. If I need to make the decision now, I'd make it now. If not, I have a couple questions.
take a look at them and feel. And
I have taken a look, but if we could talk offline, that'd be great.
We can do that, or you can just make it-
Email you?
Yeah.
Great.
And then I'll circulate it to everybody.
And then we can take action in our next council meeting. Yeah.
The one thing I will say, and the only reason I'm saying this is because Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez enjoyed her services on, I think, the Health Commission, and that you preferred to be able to stay there. So I want to give you credit for asking for it. So I just want Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez to indicate the ones that she's on that you want to stay on.
Yeah. Well, I was on the advisory board of health, and I wasn't able to attend towards the last part of the year because of my job. So I'm fine switching out of that, but I'm also willing to stay on it. The one that I would like to stay on is the school district liaison, because I deferred to the school district and had them make the decision, and they said they would like to keep me for
Okay,
that.
all right, so
that's
just
it.
with those things. Otherwise,
it.
just give me an email, then we'll get it taken care of, and I'll get it to Jared.
Well, and I did want to stay on the Human Services Planning Council. That's the one that divvies up the social service monies.
Oh, okay, yep. All right, so as long as Simon knows that, then,
Councilmember Howard, any?
Honestly, I think what's great about the commissions is the chance to change and get a new flavor. And I would certainly, and this is what I had actually emailed the mayor, is my first choice is the first choice of you to pick which commissions you're most interested in. And if that means I move to something different, that's what I would choose to do. So have at it.
Councilmember Howard.
okay, next item is discussion regarding city council attendance at the 2018 National League of Cities, and pretty attractive visit there in November to Los Angeles, if anybody's interested.
When do we need to decide? This might be the first year that might be a possibility for me in November. It might just be that I see a warm climate and.
Our city manager, do you know when we need to have the decision made?
No, but I'll take a look at it. You know, the whole idea is that, the sooner that we get that made, I want to. It's always nice to take advantage of every discount you can get on something like that. And
so would 2 weeks disadvantage us if we come back and?
I don't believe so. When's the conference again?
Well, it's 2 days after.
Next fall.
March 11th through the 14th.
Oh, for that. No, that's for the Minnesota, not for the. Is that for?
There's one in March.
The national.
That March 11th to the 14th is in DC.
I'm going to retract my statement. The November 7th one is 2 days, 1 day after the election. So I'm just going to I think everyone's going to be tired after that type of an event. So I don't know if I want to.
Well, why don't we ponder, and then if somebody has, over the next couple of weeks, let me know, because I can get it to, if you guys can email me or email Steve, we can book it, okay? City managers report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I really don't have any specific thing to report on this
Thank
evening.
you.
Yeah. I knew
Not
you'd
going
see
to comment
that.
on the ducks? You're not going to tell us about these ducks that we saved? That's our.
Oh, can I
Wait,
ask?
wait, oh,
Can I ask one question? And
Sure.
this may be inappropriate, I don't know. And I was going to mention it to you. The legacy of Jonathan O'Shaughnessy is being perpetuated. There are collection boxes in various locations, the credit union, everything throughout the city. And what they do is they buy and deliver meals to the homeless and everything. Jonathan's mother had asked, and I just completely forgot to ask if they could have a collection point here. Just, it's not, nobody sits there and just in the foyer and the entryway to City Hall. So if you could, let me know about that.
I'll take a look
let
at
her
that.
know. Okay?
yeah.
Okay,
See,
I'll just tell her I
I
brought
don't
it
know.
up. And
I
then
don't know what our policy is on that offhand.
Yeah, and and that's why I
Mhm.
wasn't going to commit until I made sure I talked to you and
Yep.
and everybody else over here. So I will let her know that we talked, and I'll get back to her as soon as I can.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
But I
Mr.
do
Mayor?
have to say, oh.
No,
wait.
go ahead.
Okay. So, but Councilmember Howard brought up a good point. Something I probably should have said. Now, the whole thing about the ducks, right? Yeah, but what people really don't know is that we were directly responsible in saving 2 snowy owls. And there's a story there, and we'll put that out, but really cool.
Well, if we're
That's all I
talking
can say for now.
wildlife, when I walk the dogs down 67th going towards Monroe Park, there's a huge eagle sits in the tree up there and looks at my dogs, and I dare them to try to pick them up. But it's amazing when you're just walking in the morning, you look up, and I mean, pretty amazing what the wildlife did. And let me ask you this. So we're walking the dogs tonight and coming down 68th onto Logan. And has anybody ever seen a skunk in Richfield? Because I smelled one tonight. So one got killed somewhere.
We're all over the
All right. I've never seen. I told him, I said, we don't have skunks. But apparently we do.
Well, maybe we're upsetting the ecosystem by saving all these ducks and
Mr.
now
Mayor?
there's skunks.
I'd like to move claims and payroll.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second.
Aye.
See, that's why city staff likes me, because I'm the only one that takes care of them.